Jack, we good? Okay.
We good. Wittenberg is a place, and while the names may change, the stories, personalities, and experiences do not. What are Hud and I doing here? Being on the other side of our Wittenberg student experience, we know there is no one right path. The mission of our time together, each show, is to help you, our audience, know that there are many different paths to purpose, to experience, to success. Your path to Wittenberg was different. Your path after Wittenberg, as ours is, will be different too. On our journey together, we are passing the light from the stories and experiences our fellow alumni are sharing with us. This month's episode, New Year, New Startup. Now, our guest tonight, social entrepreneur Jessica Benson, a 1986 elementary education major and founder of Immersive Cure. And Silicon Valley entrepreneur Chase Beach, class of 2015 business major and founder of both InsureGrid and Anadro. Being an educator was a calling that Jessica never even questioned, while Chase never thought twice about starting a business in, of all places, Palo Alto, aka Silicon Valley, the tech startup capital of the world. You would think their Wittenberg experiences would have been completely different between the late 1980s and the early 2010s, but between the beautiful campus, the volume of things to get involved in, and professors and administrators that care, both Jessica and Chase had similar experiences. Different paths, but similar experiences. Let's dive deeper into those experiences. As Jessica describes it, women didn't have many options in the late 80s in terms of career choices. And while she graduated with an elementary education degree, after a campus recruiting visit from Fieldcrest Cannon, a textiles manufacturing company, Jessica signed up on the spot and went immediately into sales for them, living in Manhattan, of all places, then Boston, then Philly. And between big pay and a car, there was no reason for the party to end. However, aging parents and continuing to build a family of her own brought her closer to home and then eventually back to Ohio. Right as Chase was graduating in 2015, Jessica entered the world of virtual reality while volunteering at the Children's Hospital in Akron. Watching the effects VR, virtual reality, brought about to reducing the pain and stress from medical treatment, hospital stays, and spending time with military veterans and end-of-life care, she launched Immersive Cure. That was the genesis of the idea for Immersive Cure, a VR startup focusing on veterans, hospice, and palliative care organizations. Being a female tech entrepreneur focusing on virtual reality, the elderly, and veterans has led Jessica to become a spokesperson, featured in many articles, radio stations, and podcasts, and she is now on ours. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Growing up in Cincinnati, Wittenberg was too close to be far. This is a lot to take in, so stay with me. Wittenberg was too close to be far and too far to be close for Chase. And after visiting campus, he knew this was where he wanted to be. Experiences across many of the liberal arts disciplines he got across campus gave him the confidence to make a move most from Ohio would think insane. Move to Silicon Valley and become a tech entrepreneur. However, Chase floated the idea to Dr. Kaplan, the entrepreneurship chair back then, and just the simple nod from him gave Chase everything he needed. As we all are, Chase is standing on the shoulders of those who came before him, and in this case, that's a 144-year family tradition in the insurance business.
What?
So, starting InsureGrid, that streamlines the insurance buying process, was not like starting from something from nothing. To some degree, with the move to California, he was actually just capitalizing on the resources a place like Palo Alto, with all its startup infrastructure and ecosystems, could offer.
Nice.
So, after rooming with a Wittenberg friend's aunt and uncle, whole story in and of itself, while using that time to find more permanent place to live, he moved out and roomed with the ATOs on Cal Berkeley's campus. At that time, he built a network from scratch, and with each coffee meetup and introduction, he brought InsureGrid one more step closer to becoming a reality. Realizing recently InsureGrid was not going to experience hockey stick type growth, which most venture investors require, he turned the reins over to his team and started focusing on his second startup, Anadro, an independent power provider attempting to build a power grid serving Southern California. Creating a startup company from scratch, creating something from nothing, where the hell do you even start, right? What resources do you need? How much money? Where do you find it? How do you build a team? Where do you find advice? What should you even start? What about risk? What if you fail? What would people think if you tried this and failed? Better question, what would you think if you didn't try it and never knew? So from here on out, we will navigate the maze of New Year, New Startup and find out together the deeper answers on why Witt, what happened while they were here, and how our guests navigated to success. And our time together is all about asking questions, so we're going to turn it over after we get through with our interview to the audience, and we want you to start thinking about questions for our guests.
Absolutely. Let's welcome our guests. All right. Well, the one thing, Chase, I found out, and now your family will find out, that our high schools were around the corner from each other.
Yeah, rivals.
So it all starts in Cincinnati, as Timmy doesn't want to claim it. He was born there, but he doesn't want anything to do with it. So let's talk about high school. You mentioned that you were an athlete.
Yep.
Was Wittenberg one of your top schools, you know, as you're going through the selection process? What led you to Wittenberg?
Sure. It was not. One of my mom's best friends, Dr. Wagner, Dr. Kathy Wagner.
She's here. Yeah.
Would always tell me about Wittenberg growing up, and I grew up playing lacrosse, and so I had a Wittenberg lacrosse, penny, but I wanted to play, Wittenberg being Division III, I wanted to play Division I, and that was my focus, playing Division I lacrosse. So I actually went to another school, High Point University, my first semester, thinking, I played lacrosse in Cincinnati, I'm going to, crush it playing D1. And I lasted about a week, and I got cut from the team. And so I was thinking, I still want to play lacrosse in college, and so where should I go? And my parents brought up Wittenberg again, and I went and toured it, and I was actually like, oh, this is a cool place. So, why not go to Witt? So it was one of those things where I thought bigger was better.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go for the big D1, and so I tried it, and that's how I ended up here.
Yeah. So talk about a couple things: the disappointment being at High Point. And then who took you around when you came to visit Wittenberg?
Jack Bornhofen and Jordan Shoger, class of 2014.
Okay, so I imagine you had a good time. You lax guys.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, we don't enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
It was a good visit. They were like the A squad.
Okay.
You got Jack. They had if they were the sales people, they had a high closing rate.
Great. So Jessica, hometown.
Can I jump in on the lacrosse thing, though?
Yeah.
I played lacrosse at Wittenberg.
Oh wow.
I did for 1 year.
Okay.
Not bring that up. Like,
I
what?
didn't. See, right?
All right.
I'm sitting with
We're
little,
discovering new things all the
little
time.
sticks, yeah. So, anyway, what's your question?
No, that was.
Only 1 year, really.
1 year,
I was a
okay.
walk-on. It was new. We still had wooden sticks with leather little net. Yeah.
Oh,
There was a
wow.
while ago. No steamer when I was here either. So
Uh-uh.
It was outside, practicing outside.
You
I don't
didn't
even know
have
what
the
that is.
fancy
Didn't have the
indoor-
fancy-
yeah.
No, it was outside, and you had to walk pretty far to get there.
Yeah.
Those fields that were way far away.
All right, so you shared with us a little bit about your experience as you kind of walked onto campus. It was a little bit different. You were here, and it was kind of right off the
It was so
rip.
great. So first, Ken Benny is the guy who recruited me.
Yes.
We all love Ken Benny, and I don't know if you knew Ken Benny, but he was in the 80s. I think he must have had all of New England, because so many of my
Oh, yeah.
friends know Ken Benny, and he's the reason we came here, because he just made my family, myself and my parents, feel like this was a safe little place. My parents went to Gettysburg, so I was looking for a small liberal arts school. Mom was a teacher. I was going to be a teacher. There just wasn't a whole lot of encouragement to really dive in high school and think, really, what do I want to do with my life? And so
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was that. But walking on campus, everyone's like, hi, hi, hi. I'm like, that. I'm all about this. Like, this is great because then you feel like you have immediate friends. So I was sold the day we went on our tour.
Yeah, you
And then
didn't
I
men-
had to become
yeah.
a tour guide to say hi to everybody.
Oh, you okay? Backwards
Yeah.
walking person.
Of course,
Wait,
right?
you didn't say what's your hometown?
My hometown was Rochester, New York. That's where-
Rochester,
yep.
upstate?
Yep.
Yeah.
Upstate, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you look at any schools near home, or you definitely wanted to get away?
So let's just say I wasn't the best student, and Wittenberg had rolling admission, and I got in November. So this is where I went. No, really. I went and saw Gettysburg. I saw a couple different places,
Yeah.
but this is it. There's just
Great.
like no question. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I had a similar experience, and when you and I talked, it kind of brought it about for me. So I was on my overnight visit, also with a laxer, and the next morning I woke up and went to the bathroom and started kind of washing up for the day, and I was getting ready to go home and all that kind of stuff. And every single person that walked in that bathroom while I was brushing my teeth and whatever said hi to me. And like that is the moment I will never forget. That is what sold me on Wittenberg. They had they knew I wasn't on their floor. They knew I wasn't supposed to be there, but they like went out of their way and that, like they didn't know me from anybody. And
Yeah.
yet every single person to a person said, "Hey, good morning, what's up?"
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the place I want to be.
So out there, is it still that way? Y'all still happy? Hi, hi. Okay, good.
They got
that
the-
makes me happy.
They got the cell phones now, so there's not the.
Oh, don't, old guy on the lawn, get off my lawn, guy.
We had to
that-
verbally
Get off my lawn.
communicate.
Come on.
I had to
We know
ask you
somebody like
about your
that.
day. So,
It's funny.
Chase, talk about, you consider yourself a high-level athlete coming out of high school. So High Point was probably your first kind of big disappointment. So now you're at Witt, you're on the lax team. What were your expectations, your feelings, transferring for one? How was that transition to Wittenberg?
Yeah, it was a challenge. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. I grew up in a small town in Cincinnati, and I excelled and I did well. And you're the big man on campus when you're a senior in high school, and I've been in the same place my whole life, and so I'd never been the new kid, and so I transferred to Wittenberg my second semester freshman year. And for the first time in my life, I was the new kid, and I was on the bottom of the totem pole. And so
So you had two
Seen us
new
freshman
kid
days.
experiences
Yeah. Yep.
very quickly, back to back,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because you went to a new school,
Yep.
and then you went to Wittenberg.
Yep. And I also had friends at my previous school. And
Ooh.
so I was, I kind of was trying to like start new, but I still had like, because, your fall, like when you first get to school is when you make like a lot of your close friends. And I didn't have that. And I remember feeling like left out almost. And actually one of my best friends now would just repeatedly call me the new kid as a joke, but I was the new kid. And, I remember, for the first time, like really feeling anxiety and like, just kind of that pressure of like, oh wow, like this is so much change at one time, and that kind of initial rejection of not, being the star
Yeah.
athlete anymore.
So how'd you get through that? How'd you make those two big transitions? What kind of got you over those humps?
Yeah, it was a process for sure.
Can you describe that process?
Calling my parents a lot. I think, talking about startups are really a team game. And, college was, it's like a team game as well. And I was super lucky to have, parents that were super supportive. I made friends super quickly, like back to everyone saying hi. Everyone was so welcoming.
Yeah.
But I had to like kind of go through it myself. And, I remember going to, I think, Shovelin for the first time and meeting with the therapist. And I had never, talking to a therapist before, but I had these like kind of like feeling like nervous and anxiety.
Yeah.
And, I just started talking to someone, and that was super helpful. And it's something that's still super helpful for me. But I think, yeah, as like these transition periods, they can be super tough.
Listen, I've
Yeah.
had panic attacks, and I talked to therapists. I still have one. So like, you're not flying solo here.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
yeah.
I think we all, hopefully, healthy
Yeah.
people need help.
Right.
All
You
of us.
need- we need to
We
talk
do.
to people.
We absolutely
No
do.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jessica, speaking of mental health, how was the view when you were in school did you have anything that you struggled with? I know you had like a great experience, but were there any like challenges making the transition from high school to?
Oh, no, I was
Witt?
ready.
You were
I was
ready?
ready.
Okay.
And I also knew where I was going, and I felt like it was going to be really super comfortable here. So yeah, I was definitely ready. Leaving Wittenberg, you think you're ready, but then you get out in the world and you miss your posse, your tribe that you have. But what's amazing is 40 years later, I still hang with those people. They're all over the place, right? And we still get together. And one of my dear friends has Parkinson's, and when her husband's travel, I'll go and stay with her. It's just, and I hadn't talked to her for probably 10 years, found out that she had Parkinson's and reconnected, but she has no problem, like, asking for that help from somebody that she knew
Huge.
from freshman days.
It's huge.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Yeah. And what I found over time is that some of the people that I didn't really know all that well on campus have become some of my better experiences, my better friends, my better, like, and kind of to some degree, it sounds similar, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we could speak to that. I
Yeah,
think,
I didn't even like you.
Well,
You didn't even
He
like
told me that, yeah, he didn't like you.
I know.
well, Tammy, I'll say you were one of the best customers I ever had, and
That's the problem.
yeah,
That's
But
who
then-
likes me for that reason.
I did
That
like
was it.
that. I liked the cash,
The
but
wallet.
then as our relationship developed over, years from the 2000s all the way to now, it's a great example of what you're saying. You got your crew, and then you're going to develop some more personal relationships from folks that you might not have been close to at Wittenberg. So you talked about once you left. I don't want to skip ahead too far. So where was your first stop out of Wittenberg?
So I was an education major. This is great. If I was going to be a teacher, it was $14,000 a year. Yeah, that's after a Wittenberg education. And so they had a bunch of companies come in and you did interviews. It was tremendous. And so Field Chris Cannon, they sold sheets and towels. They're big in the 80s. And so they came in, and Don Ness, who went to Wittenberg, came back and was recruiting and hired me there right on the spot. And again, that was a November thing too, and so it was good for me. And it was $21,000 plus a car plus an expense account, so you can't go wrong, and sales is kind of natural for me, so it was an easy decision.
But how is sales natural for you? So you are
I'm a little bit of an extrovert.
I understand. But there's a lot of conversation right now around the idea that you've got to major in the thing that gets
Oh,
you a job, right?
right.
Like that's a lot of the thing and conversation that's happening.
Right.
And yet you were an education major and yet got a really big job right out of school. Like, talk us through that a little bit, please.
So a lot of that had to do with my involvement on campus.
Okay.
And so I was a tour guide. I was the Wittenberg Tiger. I did Union Board. I brought REM to campus. That was a pretty big one. I get a little cred from my son.
As you should.
Right. And so, and I was in a sorority, and I was just very, very involved. So I think that played a big role in being able to move out of that education space and be interesting to a company, because you are more well-rounded. And the great thing about Wittenberg is you can try, you can fail, and you fail and you try again. And it's such a
Totally.
safe place to
Yeah.
just, you screw up. Everybody does. I still do it. But it was just a safe place to fail and try again. And so I did try a lot of things. Yeah, so I think that was part of it. And then education, you're always teaching in sales, because you're teaching them about, like, my new headset. This is like, I'm going to teach you about this. I'm going to educate you.
Totally.
So sales and education kind of go hand in hand for me.
And so in the interview, in that process, they saw that, and they kind of overlooked, let's say, whatever your major was, and they just saw that you were a well-rounded person and had experience and had a knowledge and had something that they wanted,
Right.
and that kind of thing. So that played a lot into
It did.
it sounds like.
It did. And yes, I would say, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so why a business major?
Well, I started selling T-shirts out of my dorm room
Is that even
in
legal?
Ferncliff.
You were in Ferncliff.
I was in Ferncliff. Yeah,
My work study
sophomore
was to be like the guard at Ferncliff.
Yeah. I've always been selling things. Both my parents are salespeople, and so I kind of just naturally was like, oh, like I guess I'll do that. I mean, I still need to figure out what my official like major was, but like my major was duct taped together with a lot of different
Listen,
things.
in the records, I even double checked.
Is it?
It is. You are technically a business major.
Oh, that's great. Okay. All right. We'll go with that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, so I mean, I took all, like the business classes kind of came naturally. Like I come from a family business and I took Dr. Kaplan's Leading the Family Enterprise. But, you know, one of my favorite classes and best helped me like being in sales and business was I took Patrick Reynolds' theater class my junior year.
Love it.
And I was like the only kind of non-theater person. And they're like, why are you taking this class? And I was like, I need the credit and like this seems fun. And
It is
was,
one of the hidden gems on campus. My 2
Yeah.
cents. It's like, it's
Yeah. And so I took the business classes just because I thought, I guess in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm a business person, like, so I should take these business classes. But like I also like took different philosophy classes and things like that.
Right, wasn't that great? Like you could take so many different kinds of classes
Yeah.
and just try it on, see if
Yeah.
you like it, see if you don't, see
So,
if you do well or
Chase,
you don't.
was there any familiar pressure to follow in the footsteps? Because
Yeah,
you
so
know at
you're-
home.
what you're at, like
Yeah,
in
listen.
insurance. Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're coming from a family that is the family business. You're
Yeah.
gravitating towards the business major. In the front or back of your mind, was it like one day I'm gonna take over, or I'm just doing this to kind of satisfy maybe what they want?
Yeah. Well, so real quick, my family's been selling insurance since 1876.
Incredible.
It's like a true story.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how I raised my seed round, by the way. I just
Oh, you
like,
did?
yeah, I was like, yeah, it's in the blood. And they're like, okay, like it's in the blood. I'm like, yeah, sure.
I want to know your investor.
So no, there was never, I don't think there was ever much pressure. You can pan out to my parents, you can look to see, but no, there wasn't much pressure. And I just remember being a kid, my parents had this office in town, and I remember walking in, and my dad had like a little nameplate that said Charles Cedar Beach III, and under it said President. And so I don't know if I took it or I took his old one, and because I'm Charles
You
Cedar
like
Beach.
snatched it right off your his desk.
I had it in my room, and it said, and I'm Charles Cedar Beach the Fourth, and so I just printed out IV and just put it over the 3, and that's kind of what I always wanted to do.
Is that what sold the investor? So like you put that when you went in for your pitch, you brought that to like the investor
Yeah,
meeting.
well, at the time I didn't have any money, so I was living at my parents' house. So literally there was like a photo behind me on the Zoom, and it was like my family portrait when I was 12. And I was like, I really need this.
Teach the 4th president.
Exactly.
I'm your guy.
I really
Yeah.
want to move out.
Yeah.
Well, no, Chase, so talk about that. A lot of people think when they hear Silicon Valley startup, they're hearing money, parties, you know, you're with Zuckerberg hanging out. But the reality is that's just a small percentage of people when they're starting something. So kind of explain to folks, you're at your parents' house. There's a lot of stories about, what is it, Amazon maybe started in the garage somewhere or something like that? Yeah.
Apple.
So-
Apple,
Apple.
Amazon, you name it.
So
Dropout,
Yeah,
the whole
Care.
thing. That's the
but now with like social media and it's pumped out there that it's instant success. So talk about being at your parents. How did that feel? Was that a sense of security? Of course they got your back, but you got no money. How do you take those like next steps in starting something that you feel in your gut's gonna work?
Yeah. Well, I was 28 living at my parents' house, so I was,
That's great.
I wanted to get out of
great.
there. So I lived in
no college debt.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I lived in San Francisco from 2015 to 2020, and I started my business in 2019.
Okay.
And I went through a whole thing, and I met my first investor on an airplane in 2018. We were sitting in the same row, and he was reading the Everything Store by Jeff Bezos, and I just started talking to him, and we just hit it off.
Come on.
Yeah. Yes.
That's an airplane
Steve
pitch. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I have the elevator pitch, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, I wasn't working on InsureGood at the time. I was working at another startup. And then in 2019, when I was working on my business, I actually had a falling out with my original co-founder. He left and started a competing company. Which is
Awesome.
a whole nother. I am the social network. No, I'm just kidding. But things happen, and so I was actually reaching out to this guy because he worked at Amazon, and I was like, oh, I can pitch, because he used to work at an insurance software company, and
Okay.
I was like, I don't want to do this insurance startup anymore, and so I'm going to meet with Steve, and I'm going to get a job with him at Amazon because he used to work in insurance, and so he can relate to this story. So I tell him this story, and he was like, Chase, I'm not going to hire you at Amazon. I'm like, darn. He's like, I'm going to invest in your startup. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. It's so hard. And yeah, he ended up writing the first $25,000 check.
Wow.
And so that's how it
And that's what
started.
kicked you off.
That's what kicked me off. And then COVID happened.
Ugh.
And I moved back home because I didn't have any money. And the whole time I just, I wanted to hit these benchmarks. Like as a startup, like if you hit certain benchmarks, like there's an opportunity you can get funding. And I was just so focused on hitting this milestone. And I was living at my parents' house, and I hit the milestone, and then I was like, oh, I can fundraise now. Like I have $10,000 in MRR. So now, like, where's all the money? Like, it should just be
Of course.
coming in.
Right.
And I had to pitch 134 investors.
And you made a great
Oh
point.
my gosh.
How many no's did you get?
131. Yeah.
But that shows that if you just keep grinding, you're gonna hear no all the time,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to start something.
No way. The first bank I talked to gave me money just like that. No, are you kidding me? Like, you got to
Yeah.
talk. I had to talk to 10 banks, and most of them, it was, oh, that's so cute, Timmy. Thanks for coming in, you little 23-year-old kid, talking about this chicken finger restaurant you want to start up. Everybody laughed me out of their offices. And then I was at a alumni gathering in Columbus, and this guy named Matt Starkey, who I kind of knew, we kind of ran, he was a soccer player, I was a laxer, whatever. We kind of knew who each other were, but we weren't like friends, right? And I sat down and I told him my sob story, and he was like, oh, that's interesting. I work at Fifth Third Bank. Why not on Monday you come in? Because I was depressed. I was just like kvetching. I was like, whatever. And he was like, let's talk to my credit department. And then like a couple of months later, that's what happens. But that's what happens, right? You're like
Yeah.
on a plane, you're working your ass off. You're doing 134 different pitches, and 131 say no, and you meet the dude on the airplane that then gives you the first 25 that then says, hey, this is a thing I got to go do, right?
Yeah.
That's overnight success.
So, yeah. Yeah.
It was
Or that's
it
a
was
lot.
fun though. I don't like. I guess I'm an oblivious person, but I was like, I'm gonna do this.
To some degree, you got to be.
Yeah.
But when you put
and-
it out there,
Yeah.
it grows, right?
Yeah.
If you put your idea out there, and it just keeps multiplying.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy for you. That's
All
pretty
right,
good.
so let's
Yeah.
turn the tables. You
No,
ready to
you
turn
go,
them on
you go.
Jessica?
I'm gonna go right after you. You go.
Ready.
So I mean, yours obviously was an overnight success. As soon as you you got done selling towels and linens and all that, you got into VR, and all of a sudden it was an instantaneous barn burning success. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly it.
Okay. So if not that, then what happened?
So I sold for a lot of different companies, Fieldcrest Cannon, Coleman Camping Gear, those kind of things. And as we moved, I actually got back into the school system. And as my kids were in school, I was the office clerk of the elementary school. So I was going to the school at the same time they were.
Sure.
Blah, blah, blah. That was all great. But 2015, my son got a Gear VR headset, the one you're snapping your Android phone into.
Yeah.
And I saw that for the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh. So back step a few seconds there, my mom, when I was a sophomore in college, my mother had a brain aneurysm, And she ended up spending over 20 years in a nursing home because she lived till she was 74. So the time I was 19 till I was in my 40s with kids, whenever I wanted to see her, I had to go to a nursing home.
Amazing.
And we didn't have a, well, they bleed you dry. In 20 years, they
course
bleed
they
you
do.
dry.
Yeah.
So she ended up in a Medicaid facility with cinder blocks. It was horrendous. My dad passed away in 2000, so I moved her to Atlanta to another nursing home that was lovely. And we brought the kids in, we brought the elementary school in, we built all this stuff. So when I saw this in 2015, I knew that there was a space for this in the elder care community. Because people, the rooms shrink and they don't move around anymore. They could be in a wheelchair or they don't have visitors coming in anymore. And I just saw this opportunity. And so you work with product market fit, right? So is my idea something I love or is my idea something that there's a need out there? And so just from personal experience, I thought certainly there's a need.
Of course.
Yep, so that was the idea, but I had just moved as an empty nester to Akron, Ohio. My husband's a pediatric anesthesiologist who's top 145 doctors in the country.
Hey-yo.
Look at
Had to
that.
say shout out to Greg. Yes, but thankfully I had that support also. Of
course.
Like we had financial support. I could do a startup. I was in my 50s. There was no big risk for me.
Sure.
But it was a big deviation. You know, that's risky because you do put it out in the universe and then everybody knows you're doing a startup and you want it to succeed on multiple levels. But
And then you actually got to go do it.
right. So I went out and since I was in Akron, I was volunteering at the hospital that my husband works in. And so I started a VR company, basically, a volunteer program there for 2 years, and the hospital loved it. We took it into the infusion lab and into dialysis and up on the floor and into the burn lab. And like, they would put the headset on and they're supposed to be stretching like a skin graft. And it's so painful, the kids
Yeah.
won't do it, but if they're in the headset, they're playing games, they're doing this, the people were calling the physical therapist to come and watch this. This child has no pain. They have no idea, but they are doing their exercises. So it just kept building and growing. And so the hospital loved it. They kicked me out, so I went from pediatrics to geriatrics to where I really wanted to go. And so, yeah, and they're very similar, by the way, the peds and the geriatrics.
Yeah, how so? Like,
Oh my gosh, very inquisitive. They want to talk. Neither one of them have a whole lot of outside stressors going on. Right? They don't have work. They don't have
Right.
kids. They don't
Yeah.
have all that kind of stuff. They are their own human.
yeah.
And so I found a lot
distraction.
of similarities.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so Jessica, so what I'm getting is that your pain and sorrow from your mom actually has led you to help others. So your entrepreneurial idea and startup came from your heart.
Yeah.
Was a lot of people have this thing that it has to be some business that's you need some crazy product to sell. You're gonna have some, incredible idea, where some of the best ideas come out of unfortunate situations.
I agree.
But you
Yeah.
end up helping people.
Yeah.
And that's, that's one of the things, if you can get to a point, and I know you're at a point now where you're able to help, but that's an incredible
Yeah.
situation. I don't know if you ever thought about it that way.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Because, you sit there and you wonder, why is she lingering? Why is my mom still here? Why are we suffering? Why didn't she
Yeah.
get to die when she had her aneurysm at 48
Yeah.
years old? Because if you think about it, she's trapped. She ages. She doesn't get to do all of it with the joy that I'm doing, right? So
Anything,
she was
yeah.
robbed. But at the same time, we were robbed because she's not really your mom anymore. I actually ended up calling her Chicken Little because she wasn't my mother, but she is my mother. It was a little twisted.
That's weird.
I
Well,
gotta
you
say.
got to create some of that separation, I'm sure, so that
Right.
you can kind of deal with
to deal
what's
with
in
it
front of you.
and embrace it and be okay with it. So
So back to this whole thing. You've got this idea,
Mm.
and then you have $1 million the next day. Is that right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was on my own. I was a female over 50 in tech, and there's a small startup place, Bounce Innovation Hub in
Okay.
Akron, Ohio.
Okay.
Tremendous. There was so much support there. There was iCore. I don't know if you guys have iCore here, but it's an accelerator where you
Awesome.
learn about being an entrepreneur, because I did not take any business classes. I was cut and paste the whole time. And so it was all new to me. but it was really exciting. And I had read a book, and it's Moore's Law, like technology is just going to keep going faster and higher and faster. We cannot keep up with that. Our brain just cannot keep up with, I mean, look at AI. So it just said, jump in where you are and learn from where you are. So I had to do that, and my son's here, and he will guarantee that anything I touched that had any tech in it broke. And here I am, now I have to learn how to load these headsets, learn all about the headsets, APKs, SDKs, and then I went out and I shot my own content. So after I started the geriatric side, I went into hospice and veterans. And so the hospice space and the veteran space was really, it's tight. It's a small, I guess, slice of life, but now I think it's 41% of the men who are 75 and older are a veteran. Today.
Come on.
45%.
I
Isn't
did
it crazy?
not- Yeah, and that's a big percentage of the
It is.
population.
It is. It definitely is. And so these veterans, they needed something. They don't get to go see their memorials. They don't get to go on honor flights. They don't get to do these things. So I went and I shot the memorials in DC so I could bring it to them, you know, to find a beautiful way to honor them. Thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Thank you. And I just got invited to do an honor flight. So in April, I'm going to go on an honor flight and film that.
Holy
and
cow.
I think that's going to be really
What's
cool.
an honor flight?
So an honor flight it was for World War II veterans for the most part, but they take them to Washington, D.C. one day. They fly out and they do the mall, so they do all the things, and then I think they lay a wreath at Arlington. And then at the end of the day, they fly back home, and they all have a guardian who's pushing their wheelchairs, and it's beautiful. So yeah, I'm excited to do that. And then we're also going to go back to Vietnam and film in Vietnam and do like 6 different locations to hopefully offer a little closure to our Vietnam veterans. And I've talked to a lot of psychologists in the VA and a couple other places, but they say, film a rice paddy. Nothing else. I don't want to hear anybody talking, just the nature of a rice paddy, because I'm going to use that in my therapy. And I'm going to say, you know, maybe this veteran can sit in the rice paddy and not have flashbacks. That's the goal, right? And
so
to walk them through it and use it as a tool.
So what I just heard you say is that you as the entrepreneur, you as the person who's deciding what the product is not also deciding kind of unilaterally. You are not making a decision in a vacuum. You are going out and talking to the subject matter experts who are going to either use or utilize your piece of equipment.
Right. And
in
then
order
interviewing
to build
veterans.
a better product? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
Yeah, and something that they need, right? So now I'm going to that product market fit a little more deeply, which is great. So my company was bought by Mind Immersive, and that was great for me because
Huge.
I don't have to fundraise. They have to fundraise,
Right.
The CEO's got to do the fundraising. I don't have to do that because that's tough. Man, I was in that, and then COVID hit, and then I was purchased during COVID, and I was grateful because that is a hard road, you know, and so that you
Yeah.
stuck with it. That's great.
But then some would argue that you lose control over your product. Talk to me about that experience.
That's difficult, you know, from going from being a CEO to not, and not being able to make those decisions, and that's difficult. But MindVR was great. They said, come on in, give us your ideas, tell us what you're thinking. We support the same thing. So they were able to say, okay, we're going to make you in charge of veterans and hospice, because
Right.
that wasn't what their bread and butter was.
Yeah.
So it was good for them to pick up the piece of the pie they didn't have as much of. And now I get to still do it. So I still get to go and create and do all these things. And it's basically, I picked up my company, and they allow me to have the freedom to bring ideas in, and it's a great, it was a godsend.
That's
It-
awesome.
Yeah.
That is incredible. So Chase, kind of piggybacking off of that. So you sold before, right?
No.
No. So you still have
I'm
a.
still on
you
the
still
road.
have a.
I'm still on the road.
Are you still? Are you looking?
Sure Grid's his.
Yeah. Are you looking to at one day get acquired? Maybe.
Yeah, that would
That
be
is the
great.
ultimate
If
goal?
there's anyone in the audience looking to buy a software company for insurance agents, call me.
Exit
Yeah.
plan.
So with your company, how many folks is your team?
Yeah, so I started InsureGrid in 2019, and we were lucky to get a lot of funding. And so, at one point we had 15 employees, and then, things change in businesses, and, venture-backed startups, investors are investing in 10 companies. 7 of them will go nowhere. 2 of them will return some money, and then, it's a power law. They're hoping that one really takes off.
The
Yeah.
unicorn.
And, in SureGrid, I wanted that to be the one that really took off, and I was really determined to make that happen. And it was a great concept, but it just never had the escape velocity, and that was hard for me to give up, because it's still a great business, but not maybe a venture returnable business. And
Sure.
so I, earlier last year, started Anadro, my new company, and I was very lucky to have investors that actually put in money for the new company. And so InsureGrid's still operating, and I have 2 employees that run that as I work on this new business.
So I got a question. The investors that
Love it.
invested in the new place, are
Yeah.
they the same that invested in the first one?
Some of them, yeah.
Because they invested in you.
Oh,
Yes, that's good. That's true though. Like an
Yeah.
investor will invest in you because you've got the drive. Obviously, you don't give
Yeah.
up. Dog on a bone. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
yeah,
Congrats.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so
Don't lie to your investors. That's
that's the key.
don't
Yeah.
do that. Don't lie to your parents. Don't lie to
Don't lie to your parents, kids.
There may be
all
some
find
stories
out.
out there about that experience.
Yeah.
So,
Look at him chuckling
shock-
over there.
shockingly, we are at time. We got to turn it over to the audience, but I want to end our time with you by asking, what was that transition moment like where you realized, oh my gosh, this thing that I started and got all these investors involved in isn't going to have hockey stick growth? That's one part of the question. Then the second one was, okay, so now what? And kind of talk a little bit about Anadro and that whole transition. And now you're kind of right back in it.
Yeah. I think Q4 of 2022, when I was running InsureGrid, I just burned out. Because I kind of knew in my heart that it wasn't there, but I didn't want to give it up, because I had that identity as, a founder of InsureGrid,
Yes.
not just a founder,
Yeah.
Right.
founder of InsureGrid. And so it was hard. Like I was lucky that I had a business partner that like helped me and like tried, but I kind of was just stuck. And I that's like when I really picked up therapy again and talking to a professional, and that's when I met you, Timmy.
Yep.
And because I was kind of down, and Kevin Steidel, who's the entrepreneurship professor, he was like, you should talk with Timmy. And I knew you as the person who sold all the Raising Cane's, and I was like, this guy's not going to talk to me, and how am I going to relate to this guy?
Right,
He's successful. I'm not.
I know.
So-
How does an insurance tech startup in
Yeah.
Silicon Valley that's a tech play relate to somebody in the restaurant industry?
Yeah.
They seem and feel like 2 different things.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, thanks for the compliment, but my guess is it probably was more,
Yeah, we're so different.
what's a restaurant guy going to help me with? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, the first time we talked in January, you were just like, it's okay. It's going to
No.
be okay. And people
That's
had,
so true.
people had told
Yeah.
me, a lot of people had told me that, and it will be okay, but it's hard to realize that. And
But you started internalizing it.
yeah, I started accepting it.
Yeah.
As like an entrepreneur, you should have to accept when things change.
Yes.
And change is just going to happen. And so I kind of just started accepting, like, okay, what should I do next? And my first, because another thing I was scared about is like, what am I going to do?
Oh, yeah.
Like, all I know is be a founder. I'm not very employable. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't have any more ideas. And
This insurance business over here might have been a good
yeah, I was like, all right, I'm going to
Just saying.
move back to Cincinnati. But
Move back in with the parents.
yeah,
Yeah.
we have a good time. But one of my advisors to InsureGrid, my first advisor to InsureGrid, he actually called me, and he is a successful software entrepreneur, and he sold his company in 2017 and retired. And he called me and said, hey, I think I figured out a way to subsidize the cost of energy. I was like, oh, how? And he told me, and he was like, I want to come out of retirement, and I want you to be my co-founder.
Wow.
And I remember it was May 11th. It was on a Thursday afternoon. It was like 3 o'clock when he called me, and I live in San Diego, and he lives up in Cupertino. And I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yes. And so I just booked a flight on the spot and just went up to Cupertino that day. And, you know, that meant a lot to him, and that's how we got Andro started.
But that's also, that's what you have to do. Like, you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to take opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know?
momentum
That's very
is
true.
really important.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah,
in-
you
in
can't be sitting
startups.
back on the couch eating chips.
So,
Yeah.
so we're talking about the next Enron, right?
No, I hope not.
Jeez.
Okay, all right. Well, they made a lot of money.
I mean,
That's
They had
for the
other
younger
things
people. That's
happening,
that's a horrible joke.
but
That's a horrible joke.
Really kind
Let's
of.
bring it in comedic relief into
Yeah.
the podcast. It's okay. We're Cincinnati guys.
But we're Cincinnati guys. Who they? So we're gonna open it up to questions. You didn't do
You
a read.
ready?
You didn't do a read today.
I know.
I'm very disappointed.
I know you are.
Okay.
But look, we're already
we
at
didn't have time.
and we're like,
we did not
we
have
wouldn't
time.
squeezed them in.
All right. So does anyone have any questions? Any questions?
Say it loud.
Hi,
Please.
this question's for Jessica.
Okay.
I know enough about Jake. First of all, I think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
Wow. My dad had Parkinson's. You mentioned your friend had Parkinson's. Have you had any luck with getting into the whole Parkinson's sector?
So can you repeat the question back and then answer it, because the audience wouldn't necessarily.
She loves me. She loves what I'm doing.
Perfect.
All done.
Done.
So she said that she has experience with Parkinson's
Yes.
and wants to know if VR is then getting into Parkinson's and working with Parkinson's. And what's really exciting is that we are just connecting now with some people in the VA who, and I'll tell you what a great organization, the largest healthcare organization in our country is the VA.
Yeah.
And so the Parkinson's department, we're getting ready to have an appointment with them next month, and it's really, really exciting. And there's just so much growth in this XR area in healthcare, right? You have digital therapeutics when, you know, you can practice things in the headset, and you can learn how to make a cup of coffee again after you've had a stroke, or you can practice things like, I mean, surgeries, my goodness, like they can do 12 open heart surgeries before they even use a scalpel, a real one, right?
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's
just
incredible.
incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, it's growing everywhere. So, yes, I'm really excited about the Parkinson's space. Thank you. Thank you.
Any more?
This for Jake, but I know we talked like this morning about best case scenario, maybe at 1 through 10 years. Playing a little devil's advocate, what if something happens like you did with the Schergers, where you kind of fall out of love or it doesn't go as good as planned? Do you have maybe like 1 or 2 things in your back pocket that you always wanted to do, or where you see yourself going next?
Yeah. So yeah. Thanks for the question. The question was,
Thanks.
is there a backup plan, you know, in 1, 3, 5 years if Anadro doesn't work out? Is that? I currently do not have a backup plan. I am very all in, but I know what I love doing. I love working at early stages with businesses and playing on teams, and kind of knowing what my role is kind of like a connector and on the sales and marketing
Yeah.
piece. And so I'll probably just try to start another company.
Yeah.
Call me.
Or is your question more of when does someone know when it's not working and when to like get out
Oof.
and pivot? Is that what you're saying? Based on whatever number of years, like if you've been in something for 4 years, it's really not scaling. Is that when you're saying what, like, are you asking?
And
should-
if not, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
So
Is that-
why don't-
Yeah, obviously that, I mean, it kind of goes like hand in hand, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So why don't, do you
Sure.
mind answering that
Sure.
question?
Like when do you know that?
When you know it's not working.
I think, you know, you were talking about product market fit. The market will tell you if
Yeah.
your idea is viable.
How?
By money in your bank account.
And is that solely from your customers? Are you talking customers and
Customer-
investors? And-
Investors.
I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like an intuition thing too. That's based a lot on like the market, your revenue, the product,
COVID.
yeah, macro, environment factors. But I think it's so important, as a startup or just in life, just to have people who can see your blind spots.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, you have to internalize it. But I think too, like we were talking this morning, like always be thinking about like, am I doing the right things? Am I making the right progress? Am I tracking the right things? Because if you track the right things, then you'll kind of know if you're on target.
But
And if-
how do you know what the right things are? I'm asking both of you.
I don't know. I think that the response that you're getting, so I do a lot of my research, like I take the headset to veteran spaces. I take the headset into places that are the end user, right? So for me, I can walk in and get the responses.
Right.
And like this was strange because it was supposed to happen. I really believe that because you put this idea out in the universe and people are like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is good.
a
This
thing.
gives me chills, right?
Yeah.
And so it just kept growing and growing, and I was going to be doing this in hospice, but then met a veteran who it was an amazing experience, and then I just thought, oh my gosh, now I have to help veterans. And now the next phase is I'm going to become a death doula because it's end of life.
Yeah.
It can be as beautiful as the beginning of life if you know how to kind of help navigate this.
Yeah.
And so I also think that that's from all the mentors I had. My goodness, I stand on the shoulders of so many
many people.
amazing
Yeah.
mentors. And without them, I would not have been able to do this. Because, again, I'm not a business major. And I have an idea, yay, right? So but it succeeded because I could go and talk to these people who knew about startup, and knew how to do it and the questions to ask
And you kept adapting too.
all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's a big
Still.
I think that's exactly it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like one of my investors, I remember him telling me he had a big office in San Francisco, and I was like, wow, like I want a big office in San Francisco. And I remember him telling, he said, you can retreat, but never surrender. And I thought
pretty
that.
good.
It's a great quote.
But then
Yeah.
you like when you decide to step away, is that a surrender? It's
Well,
tough.
so I thought that he meant like InsureGrid, but it was more like a metaphor for
Yes.
being an entrepreneur.
Yep. Yep.
Because things will always change and opportunities will always appear in the right time. And now he's working at a different company, and so things
Yeah.
change.
That's cool.
All the time.
Any more?
We got time for one more question.
Two more.
Chase, okay, so why Witt? One of the key things, how you're here is if your sophomore year, you had a professor, Dr. Tom Kaplan, who kind of led the entrepreneurial program and said, hey, there's an internship for you after your sophomore year with Max out in San Francisco, and he encouraged you. And the other benefit, so address that and how that kind of gets you going to where you are, get introduced to that space. And then the other beautiful thing about Wittenberg, you decided to say, I'm not playing lacrosse anymore. The other programs that you started, i.e. Fishenberg, the other resources that are available, take those two.
So the question was around how did I get out to San Francisco originally?
Right.
So my sophomore fall semester, I took Dr. Kaplan's Leading the Family Enterprise class, which was like, it was so cool, but he was just a really cool person, and we would talk, and he was my advisor. And I remember one day I just went into his office and was like, I want to go to Silicon Valley and do an internship in the summer. And he was like, oh, have you ever been to San Francisco? And I'm like, never been west of Indianapolis. He's like, okay, well, yeah, great. Like, you can do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And he ended up introducing me to a Wittenberg alumni, Brian Herzog, who graduated in 2012. And I reached out to I remember over winter break, there's 35 Wittenberg alumni on LinkedIn that lived in Silicon Valley, and I reached out to all of them. And Brian got back to me. He's like, yeah, I can get you an internship. And just introduced me, yeah. And so that Wittenberg connection is really deep, and it's special. And so that's how I originally got out there, and yeah.
It's a great question, Dad. Great
Yes.
question.
Remember the conversation.
Yeah. Dr. Wagner?
Dr. Wagner.
I just want to know, what advice would you give to the students who are here currently? Like, what's the number one thing they should do in their time at Witt?
Both of you. Is that a question for both?
Yes.
Okay.
Gosh,
So
I
the
would just
question
say,
is,
yes,
what is the number one thing a student should do with their time at Wittenberg?
get involved and just try on different hats, right? Just see what fits, what makes you feel good, and if you feel it, you need to explore it. You know, that's the biggest thing, is that if you, well, maybe not. I'm a passion project kind of person. So if you feel it, you do have to let that grow and explore it a little bit.
Yeah.
And boy, this is a really safe place to do that. You guys are having the time of your life and you don't even know it. So yeah, I think that here, just try anything. Don't be afraid to fail. Yeah.
I just don't label yourself. I think a lot of
That's good.
times people label, you label yourself as an athlete or in Greek or like a business major, and you don't have to do that, and you can put on a lot of different hats and try new things. College is one of those times where you have a lot of freedom and not much responsibility.
Yeah.
You think you have responsibility, but
Not yet.
you don't. So
Yeah.
So at the risk of kind of putting us over the edge of time, you two are entrepreneurs, and I know that a lot of people have a lot of ideas in their head that they never start and they never try and they never get off the ground because it feels too risky. Can you talk to me about how you two kind of look at risk and kind of how you kind of got yourself over that hump? Because it isn't a straight defined path, as we've kind of
It's not only
navigated,
risk,
right?
but people think that it's too big of a thing to take on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Their idea, they, by themselves, it's, okay, I should do this, but how do you start? What's A?
Yeah. From the guy, the question is from the guy who's now done 2 businesses. So, yes.
I'm going to let you answer that.
Both of you are answering. it,
Yeah,
whether
both
you
of
I
you.
like
didn't
it.
have
Yeah, I
as much risk at, yeah.
I think just being curious. People want to help you, and if you can write a cold email that is authentic, and find someone's email address, they will respond to you. And I'm constantly doing it.
But that sounds too simple. Like
No,
what you're saying
yeah,
is
no, yeah.
literally just the simple thing of having an email address and writing the email and then kind of following up. Is that what you're suggesting?
Simple but not easy.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear in that, though. There's a lot of fear of failure, and fear is debilitating, right? You're afraid of being somebody saying no to you, refusing you, or you failing in front of the world. That's that thing, getting over that fear, right? But if we recognize that everybody is afraid,
That's 100% accurate.
everybody's afraid.
Yeah.
And so we all have to keep moving forward, taking that one step and the next step, and building that network around you of people who are going to support you when you do fail, because you will.
Yep.
But it's those mentors and the people that are around you that are great, just having that support system. Even if it's another Wittenberger, just to cry on their shoulder, or they'll encourage you. And I had so many people reach out when we posted this up on LinkedIn, and it was just so much fun to reconnect with just a sentence. That's all it was. Like, hey, you go, girl. Like, okay, thanks. It just feels good to have your people still interested in what you're doing.
But also, too, to let everyone know, I'm still cold emailing people, and they're still not getting back to me. But I'm still doing it.
You're still doing it.
I text you,
So
and
am I.
sometimes you
I
don't
know.
text me back.
Wait, say that again?
I said I texted him,
And that's a wrap.
but I follow up. But I follow up.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't the only one of 100. Yeah.
But also, people are busy. Like, I learned that you just can't take it personally, because people are just they're just really busy, especially successful people. But if you're persistent in an authentic way,
Right.
and they know,
Respectfully.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they know that
Can I-
you're not going to keep
Can I say
following up.
this is probably the biggest point, and we talk about this all the time. people who are successful are busy and they structure their days to say no. And it's to say no because time is like your biggest like investment. So even if you're reaching out to people, like I think it took us almost a year to do our first podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're friends and we live 10 minutes away from each other. He's busy, I'm busy. It's not personal. Never take that as personal.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Best
because
advice.
everyone's got stuff going on in their lives.
Just keep her.
Yeah, they get your message. They'll get back. Stay persistent. You're not annoying. The worst thing someone could say is stop texting or emailing me. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Whatever.
And then, but
Yeah.
how
And you
many
do.
times does that happen?
Yeah.
Every now and then.
Yeah, not a lot. Yeah.
That's right.
And also saying, when you talk to them, saying, hey, is it okay if I don't hear back from you in a week to follow up with you?
That's a good point of
That's-
advice.
that's a good
Respect.
one.
And we'll end it on that.
Yeah.
Thank you both for
Yeah, thank
joining
you
us
guys.
tonight.
Yes,
That was
yes.
Good to meet you. That was great. That's crazy.
Agreed. All right. All right. All right.
All right.
Jack,
Thanks,
Dora,
Jack.
Good job, guys.
Q,